Welcome students for online classes. Today we'll continue with the chapter 2, that is Indian economy ranging from 1950 to 1990, and in the earlier session we had studied about the agricultural reforms, that maybe the land reforms or the general reforms. Okay, in this video we'll study about the topic of green revolution and even the debate over subsidies. Okay, first let's know what is green revolution. Okay, the meaning of green revolution is it refers to the large increase in the production of food grains resulting from use of high yield variety HYV seeds, especially for wheat and rice. Okay, now what does particularly green revolution means? As the word green means, it means to agriculture or it means to forestry. Okay, so later on when we come to agriculture, based on the agriculture, what happens? Increase in the productivity or increase in the production process or increase in the cultivation will be helpful, or it will indulge in this green revolution, where it can also be said as the spectacular or the drastic change in the agricultural sector or increase in the productivity. And how on the eve of independence what happened, majority of the population was dependent on agriculture, and even what happened, there was no proper productivity because of the zamindari system. And later on when the people thought of productivity, what happened, there was no proper equipments, there was no proper money earned by the farmers to upgrade themselves. So at that particular point of time, what happened, the government introduced a new scheme, that is this green revolution. With the help of what things the green revolution is possible, with the help of HYV seeds. Why are these seeds? These are also called as the hybrid seeds. Why are they called so? Because it gives the good productivity, where what happens in earlier season, if you purchase of 1 kg of seeds of maybe wheat, at that particular point of time, what happened, only less productivity came. But when green revolution came and when this HYV seeds were used, what happened, there was good productivity. And even the chemical fertilizers was provided by the government. What will happen with the usage of chemical fertilizers? There will be good production or there will be good cultivation, maybe increase in the changes, or there will be increase in the cultivation. And even what happens, the pesticides, why do we use pesticides? Pesticides is used to kill the worms or insects which are there in the plants. So even the pesticides will help in the cultivation process. And lastly, the modernization. What happens, how modernization can be implemented? Modernization can be implemented by the decrease of the manual work, by adopting new technology, by upgrading the current situation. That kind of things can be done in modernization. With all these things, what happens, the green revolution could be possible. And regarding HYV seeds, what are these and how did it develop? First thing, what happens with the usage of HYV seeds, that is high yield variety of seeds, what happens, it gives a large proportion of output in the sense, if in the earlier, before green revolution, okay, green revolution was introduced or implemented from the year 1965. Okay, before 1965, what used to happen, as there was low productivity. When I take example, what happens, in 1 acre of land they used to produce only 10 tons of paddy. Okay, after green revolution, after adopting all the chemical fertilizers, pesticides, the HYV seeds, what happened, the output or the resultant cultivation was very good. They used to get nearly, as per my example, like 20 tons of paddy or wheat. So by this, HYV seeds helped the farmers very much in a greater extent. Okay, later on, who developed this HYV seeds? The development of this HYV seeds was done by Dr. Norman Borlaug, who was from Mexico. And later on, who took or who adopted in India was by MS Swaminathan, and he is even regarded as the father of green revolution. This is basically about the HYV seeds. Okay, now another thing, why is green revolution implemented? The main and major thing what used to happen is that as there was no proper cultivation, as there was no proper production or development in our current economy, our economy was dependent into other places in the sense the abroad places for their consumption. So at that particular point of time, what our government thought is that we need to be self independent, we need not be dependent on other places for the consumption. So to achieve the self sufficiency, now the word self sufficiency means being independent, self independency. To become the self sufficient in food grains, what happened, our particular economy or our government adopted green revolution in India. This was one of the major thing, and because with the help of MS Swaminathan, what happened, the production or the cultivation process became even easier. Okay, so there are majorly two phases under green revolution, where the first phase was ranging from mid 1960s to 1970s. So what happened at this particular point of time, the implementation of the green revolution in the beginning didn't go everywhere in the sense the people wanted to do the pre-testing, or you tell as demo, just because you need to know that the cultivation process or the production process will be successful. So what happened, only for some states like Punjab, Haryana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, what happened, only for these kind of places the green revolution was implemented. And that is ranging from mid 1960s to 1970s. Only for these places the first phase, that is called as first phase. Why? Because only for some places the green revolution was implemented. And later on, once the government got to know that the seeds or the green revolution or maybe the fertilizers, the pesticides was successful, later on it spread all over the states. Like in the second phase, that is from mid 1970s to mid 1980s, what happened, the green revolution, that is majorly cultivation of wheat and paddy, was spread all over the states in all over India. So this is one of the majorly thing, two phases of green revolution. First is from mid 1960s to 1970s, and second is from mid 1970s to mid 1980s. Okay, now we'll study about the effects of green revolution. Because of the green revolution, what good productivity or what good things happened in our economy. First thing is the increase in the production and productivity. As told earlier, there is a difference between production and productivity. What does production means? Production is the thing which you produce for the current basis. For this day, on this day I have produced so much, on the next day I will think or I will produce so much, so that is production. But what is productivity? It is based on the year, or it is based on a specified period. Like in this particular year I had so much productivity, like in the year 2018 I had this much productivity, but in the 2019 what happened, my productivity increased, or my resultant or the output increased. That is known as productivity. Okay, so what happened with the usage of all these things in the sense the high variety of seeds, and maybe the usage of fertilizers, pesticides, maybe the usage of new technology, what happened, there was good production in the cultivation process. Okay, the next one is increase in the income of farmers. Okay, what happened to the income of farmers once, when there was drastic change in the economy, when there was drastic change in the cultivation process, what happened, even the farmers started to get money, they started to earn much. What happened earlier, there was zamindari system, as because of the zamindari system the people didn't earn much, because half of the money used to go for zamindars. So when there was abolition of zamindari system, and later on when there was implementation of green revolution, what happened, the farmers used to get good yield and even good money with because of that yield. So because of that also the income of the farmers started increasing. And the next one, what happened, increase in the employment opportunity. What happens, as the people were not efficient or the people were not skilled at that particular point of time, so what happened, the people started thinking that I can work at this particular point of time. Where will they work? They could have gone to only to agricultural sector, because when they come to industrial sector, what happens, the people need a even a percentage of skill or knowledge to operate things or to do things. At this particular point of time, what happened, only agricultural sector was a option. So what happened, the people used to go there, they used to work for a longer period of time, and later on what happened, they earned a good income. By this, what happened, by even with the increase in the green revolution, what happened, the employment opportunity for the people also increased. And as told earlier, what was the main implementation thing, that is a self-sufficiency in food grains. What happens when India becomes self-independent, what happens at that particular point of time, we need not go and depend on other places or other abroad countries. So we can do our own things, we can cultivate our own food grains, we can cultivate the vegetables, we can cultivate, even we can do the organic farming. At this particular point of time, what happens when India becomes self sufficient, what happens, there will be development in our current economy. Why, how there will be development, if we depend on other places, what happens, other, we need to buy things, we need to pay them in return. But what happens when we do, when we be self sufficient or when we be self independent, what happens, government will be providing so many facilities, government will give so many programs for the farmers, so that it will be easier for the employment opportunity, maybe for earning the income or any kind of profit. So self-sufficiency of food grains is one of the major thing made by the green revolution. Okay, next is increase in marketable surplus. Now, what does this marketable surplus mean? The portion of the agricultural produce which is sold in the market after consumption by the farmers is called as marketed surplus. Now, what happened? What is this marketed surplus in detail? Before green revolution, what the people used to do, as the farmers need to consume something when they cultivate something. Okay, for example, I am a farmer, I am cultivating paddy. At this particular point of time, what will I do, after the cultivation process, some percentage of the food grains I will keep it to myself. So that kind of thing, after the leftover food grains I will sell into the market, that is known as marketed surplus. What, I'll repeat again, what is marketed surplus? If I am a farmer, what will I do, after the cultivation of food grains, I will keep some percentage, maybe 25 percentage of food grains for myself, that is for my consumption, for my family consumption. After that, the leftover 75 percentage of the food grains will be sold in the market. Why? To earn money. This is known as marketed surplus, where, I repeat the definition, the portion of agricultural produce, that is the cultivation of paddy, which is sold in the market, that is a 75 percentage, after the consumption of farmers, after the consumption, that was 25% of consumption which I had saved for myself, that is known as marketed surplus. Now you might think, how is the increase in the marketed surplus? I gave the example which was before of green revolution. Now I'll give an example of after green revolution. Before green revolution, there was no proper productivity, so there was low income or low money earned. Once there was green revolution, what happened, because of good seeds, because of good chemicals used, because of good pesticides, all these things, the productivity started increasing. No, earlier I had a given example like 10 tons and 20 tons. I'll go to the same example. Before green revolution, there was a resultant of 10 tons, and later, after the green revolution or after the implementation of green revolution, there was a what resultant or the output of 20 tons. Now in that 10 tons, what used to happen, 25 percentage I used to keep, others I used to sell. Now what happened, I have 20 tons, what will I consume? The same thing, I will not increase my consumption or I will not decrease my consumption. In this 20 tons, what will I do, I keep 25 percentage of the food grains for myself, and the leftover 75% which was increased because of green revolution, I will sell it into the market. So what happens by this time, they, when the increase in the marketed surplus, when the sale of food grains increases, what will happen, I will get more and more money, and even adopting of new technology will also help in this particular process. So this is known as marketed surplus. With the increase in the green revolution implementation, what happens, there will be increase in the food grain sold in the market and even the consumption by the farmers family. This is known as marketable surplus. Okay, so this was about the effects or the positive things happen to the people or the consumer or the farmer because of implementation of green revolution. Now what happens when there is positivity? You tell there is negativity. So let's see the failures of green revolution. Okay, the first thing failure is the limited crops. So, as told earlier in the definition, what kind of crops were used? Only the usage of wheat and rice. So, what about the leftover food grains? Maybe ragi, maybe maize, maybe jute. All these things about the people or the government didn't think about the other food grains. So, this is one of the negative things where only two kinds of crops were used. And later what happened? Limited coverage. As told earlier in the phases, what happened? First phases, which ranged from mid 1960s to 1970s, at that particular point of time, the states which was involved was only limited area. So at that particular point of time, the other areas were left unseen or left unnoticed. At this particular point of time, what happened? It was very difficult for other farmers to survive also. So this is one of the negative thing where the coverage was not given to the whole India. It was given only to some of the people only in the first phase. Okay, now the next thing is inequality among the farmers. Okay, now how is this inequality among the farmers? Maybe when it comes to adoption of new thing, or when it comes to the selling of food grains, or when it comes to the purchasing of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, what happened? When the selling person or the officer has some influence with the big farmers, what happens? He will sell only to them. By this particular point of time, what happens? The poor farmers will be left unseen or unnoticed. This will be the inequality between the farmers also. So this is one of the negative thing came under the green revolution. Okay, the next thing is the ecological impact. So what happens when you use excessive chemicals or excessive things to the land? What happens? The land starts getting polluted. So this is one of the major reduction or major failure came for the green revolution. What happened? Because of the usage of the chemicals, because of the usage of fertilizers, these pesticides, what happened? The fertility of the land will also decrease. So by this, what happened? Earlier the people used to do the organic farming, that is without the usage of any chemicals. So this also reduced the organic farming thing. And the people, when the people gets more and more money, what will they do? Normally people will adopt to new technology. By this, what happened? This was one of the problem or the negative thing for under the green revolution. And lastly, the harmful effects. Normally when there is ecological impact, it will, while consuming the food grains by the people, what happens? Normally there will be a negative impact there because of the high usage of chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. What happens? It will be even the poisonous things for the consumers who consume it. So this is also one of the negative or the failure thing under green revolution. Okay, so this was about the green revolution. Now let's go on to the debate over subsidies. Now normally when we tell debate, what comes in our mind? Some person will talk about the positive things and some person will talk about the negative things. So the debate over subsidies will tell us whether the subsidies is better or whether the subsidies is bad. Okay, so first let's know what does subsidy mean. Okay, the subsidy is a form of financial assistance offered to farmers by the government to purchase agricultural inputs. And the what were the agricultural inputs? Maybe the HYV seeds, maybe the chemical fertilizers, the pesticides, or maybe the equipments used for the agricultural process. This is known as the subsidy. Okay, where one of the great or major financial assistance given by the government to the farmers. By this, what happened? By this, even the price of the food grains will reduce. Maybe proper incentives will be given by the government, maybe proper schemes will be given by the government to the farmers to implement all these things. And even what happens? Even the loans will be sanctioned from the government, which will be of cheaper rate of interest, that will be also implemented by this scheme. Okay, so this is basically known about the scheme. And the next thing, why do farmers need subsidies? As told earlier, while when subsidies come, there will be a what happens when we come to agricultural inputs, maybe like irrigation, fertilizers, power, in the sense electricity facility, for all these things, what happens, there will be a reduction in money or reduction in price. At this particular point of time, what happens, they, even for the storage or warehouse facility, when the farmers will be having no facilities for warehouse or go downs, at this particular point of time, even government will help the poor farmers to give all the facilities, or to reduce the price for all these things. And what is the objective, the major and only one objective under agriculture will be the to increase the agriculture production and productivity, so that the farmers develop themselves, or there can be any development in the current economy. So this is one of the major thing why farmers need subsidies first, for them to develop, and later on to have a good facility to the economical thing. And as told earlier, when we come to debate, there will be for and against. For first, let's see the for or the positive things of the subsidies. The arguments for subsidies. First is to encourage farmers to adopt new technology. What happens when farmers are being encouraged, or when farmers are being motivated to do new things, what will they do? Normally they adopt for themselves in that particular situation, and they do the necessary cultivation, and they come over, or they do the good productivity, which is one of the positive side of the farmers given by the government. And later on, what happens when the subsidies is given, when the financial assistance or the money is given for the farmers, or loan is sanctioned for the farmers at cheaper rate, normally it helps the poor farmers. And even the provision of incentives, now you may think what kind of incentives, normally the loans can be sanctioned, maybe the provision of seeds will be given in an increased rate in the sense high quantity of food grains for low price or low money. And even eliminating subsidies, what happens, increases the inequality in the sense, maybe not every farmer is a poor farmer. So what happens at this particular point of time, when only some of the people are concentrated, when others are not concentrated, so there will be inequality. So this subsidy will eliminate the inequality between the people, and even makes everyone richer. If it is given to everybody in the economy, it will be helpful for all the people in the economy. Now we have seen the positive things of the subsidies, now we'll see the argument against subsidies. What happens when there is high subsidy provided to the farmers, when increase in the subsidies, what happens? Okay, first is the reducing subsidies. What happens? Only for a particular period of time the subsidies will be given, or subsidies will be positive thing. But when it exceeds, no, what happens, because of the corruption, because of bribing, only some people will be concentrated, or only some people will get major things. So what happens, after some point of time the subsidies should also reduce. Why? Because when the government will get to know that all the farmers are developed, or the farmers can stand by themselves, at this particular point of time reducing subsidies is also not a bad thing. By this, what happens, as we go on with the technology, as we upgrade with the technology, it is also profitable, so that the purpose is served. Once the purpose is served, what was our purpose to develop the farmer, or make a farmer a self sufficient or independent. So once the purpose is served, later on what happens, later on let the farmers do their cultivation process. By this it will be helpful for the government also. So what happens when the subsidies are not stopped? When the subsidies are not stopped, as told earlier, only some people who are richer, they become more and more rich, so which even benefits the richer farmers. And lastly, what happens when major subsidies, when major money is given by the government to the end people, that is for the farmers, what happens, it even is a problematic thing or a burden to the government. What happens later on, it will be burden to us in the sense the consumers. Why? Because of the increase in the percentage of the taxes, given for all the, maybe the consumer durables, maybe all kinds of appliances. So which is also a burden thing for a common man when it burdens the government. So this is also one of the against or the negative impact of the subsidies. So these are the positive and the negative things under subsidies. I'll repeat again, what does subsidies mean? Subsidies is the financial assistance or the financial money monetary thing given to the farmers at a low price or at a low amount, so that the service given by the government to the farmers will be much more. Okay, later on, the last thing we'll study about under the debates or the subsidies is under agricultural sector. I can tell as the productivity and employment, to what extent it was achieved, to what extent it was a failure. First, what happened, as told earlier, the achievement and the productivity and employment was increase in the productivity and to become the self sufficient, to be independent. That was agreed or it was approved. And lastly, it was success, that our India was self sufficient or our India was self independent. And later, what happens, the employment structure, 85 in the beginning, what happened, we saw it was 85% of the people were indulged in agriculture. Now what happened, the percentage of people indulged in agriculture is being reduced from 85 to 65. So what about the other 35 percentage people? The other percentage of the people are being indulged or they are being employed in the other sectors, that is the secondary and the tertiary sector. And lastly, what is the negative thing or what is the failure under agricultural sector? That is, most of the people or the population is indulged in agricultural sector, which is the non fulfillment into the other sectors. What happens, there should be a balance between all the sectors in the economy. So when all the people start indulging in one sector, what happens to the other sectors? It is left unseen. So at this particular point of time, what happened, it is very much necessary to be equal in all the sectors of the economy. So this, because of this only, the percentage of employment being taken, what happens, the failure was one of the major thing. This was one of the small failure of the agricultural sector, because of the equality in other sectors. Just because not there was productivity, there was a good productivity, but only when came to employment, what happened, there was no equality between all the sectors. So this was about the agricultural sector. So the assignment part, what do you mean by green revolution, how is it possible, what do you mean by HYV seeds, and what is marketed surplus? Write a short note on green revolution which includes the effects and failures. And lastly, why do farmers need subsidies and what are its purposes? Thank you, students.